What's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you guys have had a fantastic Monday and hope you're having a great night out there and staying safe. Severe weather ongoing right now in portions of Texas and Oklahoma. There is a severe thunderstorm watch already up for portions of Texas and Oklahoma. We'll talk a little bit about that, but the main topic of this video is obviously going to be the severe weather that's going to be ongoing this evening into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, and then we're going to talk a lot about what's going on for Tuesday for you folks like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, portions of Florida. And then we're at the very end of the video, we're going to briefly talk about what we do know about the Wednesday threat. This is going to be a ongoing event lasting all the way between now and Thursday. So there's a lot to talk about in this video. There's a lot to unpack, but I'm going to do my best to give you guys the cut and dry information and talk a little bit about what's going into making this severe weather event over the next several days. So if you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Appreciate the ongoing support. I likely am going to chase tomorrow, so definitely stay tuned for updates in the future. I really look forward to having like a dash cam up in my car. I will have this ready definitely for hurricane season where I can just be able to talk with you guys safely while I'm making the trip to the storm, and during the storm also I'm going to have it set up kind of like what Reed Timmer does and other known chasers out there. I'm really looking forward to setting that up. But in the meantime, let's talk about what is going on. Like I said, if you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you guys got anything I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it. It gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get going here. A lot to unpack here, but I'm going to do my best to try not to bore you with all the details. There's a lot of people who just want cut and dry information, but there's a lot of people who love the science of it too. So I try to mash both interests together to make an appealing video. So let's get rolling here. Enhanced risk up between now and tomorrow morning, and then the day 2 risk area starts. So this is all the way through about 12Z Tuesday, so that's around 7 a.m., 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, depending on what time frame you're at and what time zone you're at. So the only thing that's changed with this is the tornado risk has went up. You now have a 10% risk of a tornado in this small area of 25 miles in any given location. So the tornado risk has went up for areas of Louisiana and then the areas of southwest Mississippi, and I'll talk about why coming up. Stay tuned. If I'm not immediately mentioning your area, I'm going to talk about your area, I promise. The wind threat continues to be the biggest threat, and in fact, there's an hatched area of a 10% risk or greater probability of seeing 65 knots winds or greater in 25 miles in any given location in this hatched area, which is this black outlined area with the dashes going in between. But basically, a bowing segment of lines, a congealed area of lines is going to form and blast through this area of northeastern Texas, northern Louisiana, very far southern areas of Arkansas, and then it's going to continue into the next time frame into Louisiana and Alabama. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So tornado threat has increased. That's the only thing, really big thing that's increased. But right now, as of 6:25 Eastern Standard Time, you have a tornado watch out, and this is in effect until 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's not a super long severe thunderstorm watch, but this will all obviously continue to move eastward. And then I think later on downstream, a little further east, you're going to see tornado watches be introduced. But there's some pretty big-time photogenic storms out here in this region. A lot of storm chasers are chasing this right now, and there's a lot of pictures coming out showing pretty awesome photogenic storms out in this area that, you know, there's not a heavily populated area out there for the most part, so not causing a lot of damage or anything like that so far that I know of. But let's go on and start this off. This is around 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're confused about the time, look up here. I know a lot of people have questions about what time zone are you talking about. I'm very unsure. Well, just tropical tidbit, so it goes off Eastern Standard Time. So take an hour off this, and it's 9 p.m. So we're going to keep this going here, and this is the cluster of storms that really gets fired up here, and we're keeping going this in time. And we're starting to get to around the midnight time frame, and this starts to blast through Dallas, Fort Worth, areas of northeast Texas, southwest Oklahoma. Heavy rain begins to spread into central Arkansas, and you see this line begin to bow out a little bit. This is when the low-level jet in the wee hours of the morning begins to ramp up. So I'm very concerned about a tornado threat, and obviously the Storm Prediction Center is too, as a low-level jet, and I'll show you this here in a second, begins to ramp up in this area. So the kinematics begins to become favorable for tornadic developments. And obviously you look for the overlapping of the kinematics and the thermodynamics to create the dynamics needed for tornadic development. Thermodynamics, as always mentioned, is that those high levels of moisture, dew points in the 60s and 70s, the CAPE, how much CAPE do you have, how much available energy do you have, the surface temperatures obviously is a thermodynamic, and then the kinematics are things like the wind energy, what does the winds look like aloft, things like that. So you look at this cell here in northern Louisiana, well after midnight, you watch for these little cells that form out in front of this Boeing segment of lines. But eventually, this really comes together as you're getting into about 5, 6 a.m. and starts to blast through areas of northern Louisiana and then starts to get into Mississippi just before the sun, probably just before the sun's coming up. And there's going to be an ongoing tornado threat. There's going to be these embedded tornadoes in this line of storms moving through northern Louisiana and then western Mississippi. This is going to be another dangerous setup. And the reason it's going to be even more dangerous than maybe, what y'all experienced in Mississippi last week is the fact that this is going to be happening when the sun's probably still down. So one thing you look at here is you look at this low-level moisture. You got dew points well into the 60s, riding above this clashing and moving air mass. Well, it's not really moving. The dry line's way out here, but in general, more stable air behind this line. You can actually see the outline right here as this line moves through, and you have a little bit of a more stable air mass that falls in dew points mainly in the 50s behind this clashing line. But ahead of it, you have dew points surging into the overnight hours into the 60s ahead of this line. So you have plenty of surface moisture in place here. The big thing I'm worried about here, and the Storm Prediction Center obviously is too, is as you're getting later in the evening hours, the low-level jet, and that's why you don't have a big-time tornado threat. That's why there's only a severe thunderstorm watch out for these areas in Texas. The kinematics in place, the winds aloft, aren't really favorable. They're to rotate these thunderstorms. So really, you just have a big-time hail threat and just heavy rain and lightning, basically. But as you're getting into past midnight, the low-level jet starts to get ramped up in here and continues to surge all throughout the south into your Tuesday. So low-level jet ramps up here, tornadic potential threat ramps up here. Low-level jet pushes 40 to 50 knots, starts rotating these storms up in the upper layers of the atmosphere, and some of them will make it to the ground. So you're going to have quick spin-ups in northern Louisiana and western Mississippi as you are starting to get into sunrise, more so in Mississippi. But this is around where the line is right here. So ahead of the line, you have a low-level jet, a southwest low-level jet screaming at about 40 to 50 knots. So spinning is occurring aloft, which means in the upper levels of the atmosphere, rotating these storms. So now we can go on and switch to day 2, which begins tomorrow morning. So you have the enhanced risk up. So this basically connects this risk right here. So they connect right into here, if y'all get what I'm saying. So it goes into the next day, which is your Tuesday, tomorrow, April the 5th. So an enhanced risk stretching all the way, and this will be mainly for the morning time, right? And then it gets a little bit later into the day, and then you get into Georgia. That's when you start to get to the afternoon hours. And then look at the areas in South Carolina, which is the state I reside in. Charleston, Savannah, enhanced risk. Columbus, everybody in between. Mobile, Alabama, enhanced risk. And then you look at the tornado threat with this, and you have a 10% risk, a pretty large 10% risk of a tornado along this segment of line of storms that's going to move through. But you notice the hatched risk. Anytime I say hatched, that means I'm talking about this black outlined area. You have a chance for a significant tornado. That means you have a 10% risk of seeing a stronger tornado, an EF2 to EF5 and 25 miles in any given location in this area. If I chase tomorrow, which is more likely that I am, this is probably going to be the area that I target right into here. So I'll be watching out for any kind of tornadic activity in this area if I do chase. So This is the danger zone tomorrow along this line of storms, but also you have that damaging wind threat in the same area in the enhanced risk. Damaging wind is going to be a big threat. Hail, it's going to be a big threat too, especially where any supercells form, but obviously not as big of a deal as the wind threat and the tornado threat. So let's talk about this. This is beginning of the Tuesday time frame. We got this segment of line of storms moving through Mississippi. This continues as we're getting into 9, 10, 11 a.m., starts to sag. And I will mention, I'll show you this too. The HRRR model looks a little bit different. This begins to kind of move into into Alabama. I would say Birmingham points north, more so heavy rain, some lightning and thunder. But I think the severe weather risk really gets higher the more south you get. But watch down here. This is what I'm concerned about. You see these storms that really develop ahead of this line of storms? These could produce tornadoes. But even along this line, it feels like deja vu. I was talking about this last week too. In the same area down here near Mobile, Alabama, southern areas of Alabama, this will be rocking and rolling first thing in the morning. So, before noontime, you are going to have big time tornado potential in this area and a damaging wind threat. How consolidated will this line be? How much convection forms out in front of this line? You're going to have a low-level jet ahead of this line coming out the southwest, rotating these storms, causing some directional shear. So you're going to have a tornado threat down here. And what you watch out for is this segment of storms. And this is getting into really the 11 a.m. lunchtime time frame. You watch for this segment of storms right here. You see how this has a little bit of a hook to it right down here in southern areas of Alabama. You watch that, but you watch this Boeing segment also. And there's going to be some spin-ups in here. So this begins to move into the western areas of the panhandle of Florida as you're getting into the early afternoon hours. And this becomes a dangerous setup for these areas. So going into the afternoon hours, you're going to have a bigger risk. I will say the ingredients are more favorable for stronger tornadoes. But the big question is, what kind of environment? Well, you have a good environment, but the big question is how much convection really pops up ahead of this line or area of showers and storms. If convection gets going in this area, you have an environment in favor for tornadoes for sure in south central Georgia and southern Georgia in general. You have a low-level jet ramping up through this area. You have CAPE, and I'm about to show you that. This in question of how much it can build. But this will continue. A lot of heavy rain. But there's going to be some embedded showers and storms that are going to have rotation to them, even all the way up into the Midlands of South Carolina tomorrow. In fact, I just heard that our schools here in Columbia, South Carolina, and Lexington, South Carolina, the Midlands are actually dismissing early tomorrow. I swear when I was a kid, in elementary school back in the early 2000s and things like that, it feels like they just never did things like that. But, things are just different these days. They want to keep kids safe and things like that. But you got to watch all these storms right here in Georgia and the Carolinas. Really South Carolina is what I mean. They all have a chance to rotate. Now, are they going to touch the ground and all be tornadoes? No, that's not going to be the case. But the environment is there, especially down here in Georgia for tornadic activity. So we have to watch out for this for sure. And then going forward here, this turns into a lot of rain, and then the rest is history with that for your threat. But you look at the dew points, they rise very quickly. Tomorrow, ahead of this line, you can obviously tell with the more cooler and more stable areas right in here as this line of storms moves through. But you'll notice if you're in South Carolina, areas of Georgia, the entire air mass will change throughout the day tomorrow. You'll probably wake up to a more crisp environment. And then by the time it gets into the afternoon hours, the humidity builds very quickly as a fast-moving moist sector moves in. So you'll have dew points well into the 60s into Georgia and to South Carolina that will help make a more prime environment for severe weather in general. The next thing you look at is this very isolated. It's big, but it's not like we're talking about last week where you had this massive low-level jet covering several states. This is a very quick, just kind of surfing along low-level jet down here in the deep south. And this gets into, and you can tell with this line of storms, and see how there's a gap with the wind field right here. Right here is that low-level jet, and you can actually look at the wind bars, how they're coming out the southwest here, and they're coming out the west right here aloft. So you can tell the winds are surging ahead with this system. And so your low-level jet, your wind profiles ahead of this line are definitely coming. You're getting about a 40, 50 low-level jet surging ahead with these convection. So anything that forms in this area in Georgia and southern South Carolina, especially South Carolina as you get into the evening, late afternoon, evening hours, these storms are going to have the potential to rotate due to this wind field right here and the kinematics at place. So very small, a low-level jet. I wouldn't even call it small. It's just a very consolidated low-level jet, but it's there. So it's going to be potent and it's going to be mashing with a convection. Now, one thing you look at here is going forward here, you look at the NAM. I want to show you the NAM. The NAM is a little different. It kind of rips apart these storms, and it doesn't really show a lot of convection right in here, but it shows the storms down here, but it's nothing too crazy. It's not. It just looks different than the HRRR model. Shows a lot of messy convection up here in the Carolinas, and it just kind of shows a line of storms moving through Georgia late in the afternoon, southwest Alabama, late into the afternoon, then getting the evening hours, and then they kind of just dissipate. So we got to just kind of see what happens here. And then going forward here, and I don't know why I have all these panels pulled up about 100 times, but one thing I want to show you guys is the cape that builds into this region. So you watch for cape in this area and watch how it overlaps the kinematics in place. Well, you see how it has this weird almost bowl shape right here? That is where the line of storms moves through and stabilizes this atmosphere. But ahead of this, when this line of storms is moving through, you're going to have cape that tries to build here and reaching 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram ahead of this line. So these storms are going to try to rotate because you have the cape mixing with that low-level jet right here in southern areas of Alabama as you're getting into the mid-morning time frame for areas of southern Alabama. So this is when the environment starts to really wake up here ahead of this line. So any storms, which the line of storms will be right in here, that's coming into this environment is going to have a little bit of juice to work with. And then what happens here as the line continues to move through southeast Alabama, areas of the Panhandle of Florida, areas of Georgia, you have cape building well over 1,000 joules per kilogram surface cape with this low-level jet starting to ramp up in this area. Does any convection get going here in southern Georgia? That's a big question. It really is here. But watch out here near Savannah, areas of southern South Carolina. There's been consistently showing some kind of prefrontal cells kind of developing, kind of out ahead of this big blob of convection that's showing up right here. So we got to watch out for that for sure. But what you're looking at here is the supercell composite, and you know it looks kind of the same as cape. It really mashes well with cape. It really shows you where rotating storms, which are supercells, can form here. And like I said, it kind of really spikes here in areas of far eastern and southeastern Georgia, and then areas of southern South Carolina into the evening hours. So it might get kind of active in southern South Carolina as you're getting into the late afternoon, early evening time frame, even in South Carolina. I want to mention, and we'll wrap this video up, you're going to have some heavy rain between now and Wednesday morning. Several inches of rains all the way from northeastern Texas, southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, areas of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, into South Carolina. Anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 inches of rain is certainly possible. So you got that to deal with too. Some of these areas definitely need rain, but I really wish we could shove this rain up here into the mountains where they're having wildfires ongoing in areas of the mountains. But I want to mention Wednesday's threat too, an enhanced risk up, very big slight risk up. So a multi-day event for severe weather is definitely ongoing. An enhanced risk up. I'm watching to see the biggest risk for this. There's going to be a tornado threat, and a damaging wind threat. There's going to be cooler air aloft. Steep level lapse rates are probably going to be in progress, which is going to enhance the damaging wind threat in this area, I really think. So, but we'll watch. We'll have to see how big the tornado threat is. But about the only thing we can look at really is the NAM, and really the beginning of the time frame. You already have convection ongoing as you're getting into your Wednesday morning and Wednesday midday for Georgia and the Carolinas ahead of this cold front. You can obviously tell this is a big-time cold front that will cool us down for the late week. And then what kind of convection builds along this cold front? Will this be a line of storms as you're getting into the evening hours for Georgia, Alabama? Not sure. Are these going to be rotating storms? There's still a couple things to figure out with the Wednesday threat. So I'll keep y'all updated. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless everybody. Stay safe out there overnight, especially my folks in Louisiana, Mississippi, southern areas of Arkansas, and northeast Texas. You guys are going to be under the gun tonight. So have a way to get alerts. Stay tuned to the people who go live on YouTube. And God bless everybody. Stay safe. Talk to y'all soon.